Welcome to Marketplace Tech Bytes. It is our weekly roundup of some of the big stories in tech, and maybe some you missed. I'm Meghan McCarty, Carino. This week, another push to break up Google, this time in its case over its ad business. OpenAI has abandoned its plan to go fully for profit, and Microsoft shut down Skype this week. Here to discuss all that is our regular contributor, Joanna Stern from the Wall Street Journal. Hey, Joanna, so good to see you.
Good to see you too.
And we got to start with our bite of the week. This is a number that gives us a little insight into the week in tech. Joanna, what is your number this week?
Oh, I was hoping you'd go first, but okay, I'm going to go. It's 27%. 27, I guess is the number.
Okay.
And that's because a judge ordered Apple to stop collecting up to a 20% commission on purchases made outside of the App Store last week. And I think we're going to get into this, but 27.
All right, we will get into it. My number is 5, which I think is the number of dollars that I left sitting on my Skype account. I don't know what happened to it, if it just vaporized, but according to my email records, the last time I put money on my Skype account was in 2020. I put $5. I think I was having some kind of an emergency where I needed to phone someone overseas for a story and all my other systems were failing. So we'll get into the goodbye to Skype in just a minute. But
see, I was going to pick 0 as the number of friends I now have on Skype.
Very sad. Very sad.
Yeah.
But we first want to kind of get into some of the antitrust news of the week. First, in the Google case over its ad business. Again, just to remind folks, this is the second case in which a federal judge has found Google to have a monopoly. The first was in its search business. The remedy phase of that trial is still kind of playing out, but this week, in the other ad case, the Department of Justice suggested some remedies. It wants Google to sell several parts of its ad business. So Google has this kind of very vertically integrated system where it has these ad exchange marketplaces for buying and selling ads. It also controls a system that manages and serves those ads on websites. DOJ wants the company to sell those businesses. Joanna, what do you make of all this, just in the context of everything?
Well, I think it's very interesting also coming off of last week where we've been hearing arguments from Google about why they can't quite sell Chrome. And so a lot of this is now figuring out what parts of the companies can, or what parts of the company could be broken off. I mean, these are two separate cases, as you mentioned. But one of the arguments that Google's making in this case is that it's technically very hard. I mean,
Right.
I don't have the exact quote, but not impossible. But, they're saying this is technically not feasible to break these two things apart, that the code won't work,
Right.
that these tools are so highly integrated. A similar argument in a sense was made around Chrome, that no other company could really support the technical infrastructure that Chrome needs to have, especially for just the cost of that, and what company could come along and buy that. So these are obviously kind of common arguments being made, right? It's too hard to do this. There's too much money. Technically, it's too hard. But something's going to have to give somewhere.
All right. Well, I wanted to bring in this other development, which you mentioned, which is also kind of in the whole big tech, regulation space, and having to do with Apple, which this week is being forced to stop collecting fees on purchases made outside its app stores. This is kind of the most recent development of this very, very long-standing Epic Games trial. This is kind of an updated judgment in that suit that's been ongoing. A federal judge weighed in again because the allegation was that Apple was not complying with the previous judgment from 2021. Joanna, what's kind of the upside of this for consumers?
Yeah, I love this one because it does impact consumers so clearly. I mean, we just I feel like with antitrust, we hear it in this sort of vacuum over there of illegal and business, but this one directly impacts consumers. I'm going to give an example. So when you used to want to buy a Kindle book in the Kindle app on an iPad or iPhone, you would not really have an option to do it there, right? Because Amazon did not want to pay the fee to Apple. They did not want a cut of that. So they basically just said you can only buy books through our website. And Apple restricted that. They said you can't do that. And so with this suit, Apple was told you have to allow this. But what's revealed in this update and by the judge, who's very unhappy with Apple, they say Apple was making it hard again, or even was they made it so people could send people to outside websites, but they were really
Right.
still throwing up a lot of roadblocks
Yeah.
with something called a scare screen.
Hmm.
And what comes to light in the filing is that basically Apple had all these internal meetings about how can we scare people from going to the web. Back to Kindle. This week, because of what happened last week, and the judge saying, no, Apple, you must make it okay and accessible for users to get to the website to buy something from an app. Amazon comes along this week and says, we're adding a buy this book button to their Kindle apps. And so you press that button and now you're going to be able to go out to a website to buy. So if anyone is listening, I bet you've encountered this. If you're a Kindle user, I have for many years, and it takes away that friction. And so that's a win for consumers.
All right. Buying lots of books in the Kindle app soon. But we want to check in now.
To be clear, I don't have time to read, but yes, I would love to.
I read a lot of news and Substacks, and I need to read more books. So maybe this is the perfect opportunity. I'll read your book. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, now we want to go and check in on the darling of the AI industry, ChatGPT maker OpenAI. This week, CEO Sam Altman announced they are retreating from this plan to transition into a fully for-profit company. We also got some news this week about appointing a CEO of applications. But, OpenAI was founded as a nonprofit. It then created this capped profit arm to take investment from, big investors like Microsoft, but that was still controlled by the nonprofit. The plan had been to shed that nonprofit control by the end of the year, but that plan got a bit complicated. Folks like Elon Musk, Meta, some civil society groups were objecting to this plan, often in court. Now this week, OpenAI says, forget that. The company is sticking with the nonprofit control. Joanna, what do you think is going on here?
I think what's been going on is that Sam Altman and the board of OpenAI have wanted to shift the company to a for-profit. That means they can just take much more money in funding. But they felt that pushback, probably didn't think it was worth it at this point. And I don't think this is the end of this, but this is what they're saying they're going to do right now.
I mean, and this nonprofit is, the composition of it is pretty friendly to Sam Altman. This is kind of like a reconvened nonprofit board since the previous one tried to fire him in late 2023. So it's sort of not clear if it kind of changes the direction of the company that much. But being governed by a nonprofit, they do have a fiduciary duty to the public and not to investors, right?
Right. And Altman made a pretty clear point to say that they're still going to be taking some investment, billions of dollars investment from SoftBank. So this is, it to me seems like they stay the course, but I think we'll be hearing about this again. Also, interestingly enough, this week, Sam Altman announced that they are creating a new role, CEO of applications. This is the role. And that is going to be filled by someone named Fiji Simo, who is very well known in the tech industry, had a long career at Meta, or previously Facebook, ran their ads and the Facebook app, and now is the CEO of Instacart. And so I think this is actually a really big sign of where the company is going, that the company really does see itself as a consumer tech player. They need this sort of bigger position so Sam Altman can focus on, and he said in a post on X, he can focus on safety and compute and really building AGI AI and the big future of AI.
All right.
She can worry about the business.
We will be following what that leads to, but we wanted to take a moment to say goodbye to Skype. Microsoft shut the platform down on Monday. Of course, this was a very early mover in the video call space. It was launched in 2003. It was later acquired by eBay, which I didn't really realize. They didn't really do anything with it. They sold most of it off to private equity. And then Microsoft bought the platform in 2011. I used it a ton, when I was kind of, traveling and studying abroad in that period of time. You might recall this iconic moment in TV history that was brought to us via Skype.
I would be surprised if they do. Pardon me.
That's right.
My apologies.
That was actually in 2017, which presaged a lot of the kind of world that we were about to enter into during the pandemic. But Joanna, do you have any fond memories of Skype?
Oh, I have so many fond memories of Skype. Fun fact about me is that my first job out of college was working on Skype. I was working at a PR agency that represented Skype. So it really led to me wanting to become a technology journalist because I was starting to read a lot of the tech press. And this was the time, I mean, you mentioned is like, we didn't have video calling on our devices, right? I mean, this was revolutionary. And then we could make cheap phone calls. I mean, it really did start as this way to make cheap phone calls overseas. And I was just like really into the tech and started reading a lot of the tech press and reading coverage of it. And so I just decided I want to be a technology journalist. So Skype kind of changed my life in a few ways.
Wow, amazing. I had no idea I was going to get an answer like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I mentioned in, the kind of preamble to the segment that I had the last time I put money on my Skype account was in November 2020, according to my emails, which honestly was kind of past the prime of Skype. So I'm trying to remember what I was doing, but I think I must have been, having some kind of an emergency situation where Zoom wasn't working, because Zoom is what took over, kind of just before and during the pandemic, which was prime time for video calls, right? I mean, what happened to Skype?
I mean, that is what happened to Skype. I mean, well, first of all, I think it was really impactful on being able to make those cheap overseas calls. Because if you remember when Skype first came around, we were using our cellular phones, and cellular bills to call overseas were exorbitant, right? I mean, still can be if you don't have the right plan. And so that was like number one use case of Skype. And then two came along, video calling. And I was just thinking about when I got my mom a webcam and she could use the webcam on her computer. But then think about like what happened with phones is that we don't think about video calling as some special thing anymore. We FaceTime all the time, and that's just part of the phone, and that's part of the system, the operating system. And so Skype had a hard time, and then it kind of failed to meet that Zoom moment, as you're talking about in the pandemic. We're all at home, and people start gravitating to Zoom for some really basic reasons, that we can see bunches of boxes on the screens and it's easy to use. And Skype was kind of like this old thing that, oh yeah, remember Skype? And it took them a while to catch up. They started adding, and Microsoft started prioritizing Microsoft Teams, and here we are.
All right. Well, I want to take us out on a tribute to Skype that I found from YouTuber Alex Kapp. This is his rendition of the Skype ringtone he titles Last Call. All right, Joanna Stern. She is the personal technology columnist for the Wall Street Journal. She's got a great video about a bracelet that records everything you say and generates AI summaries. Check it out. Joanna, good to have you.
Good to be here.
And thanks to all of you for joining Marketplace Tech Bytes Week in Review. Daniel Shin produced this episode. I'm Meghan McCarty Carino. This is APM.